Can we welcome Don Blackerby? Not everyone here is familiar with NLP. I'm curious, how many of you are familiar with NLP? Okay, how many of you are not? Oh, we got some that aren't. Okay. So I want to discuss a little bit because what Don's going to do launches off of NLP and then brings EFT into it for an ADD specialty, if you will. Okay.
We don't do acronyms either.
Yeah. Anyway, NLP is something that I found myself many years ago before I ever got involved with tapping that I thought was one of the more credible, more worthwhile, more useful psychotherapeutic techniques around. In fact, it was several steps above anything else I'd ever seen at that point. And basically, it came from two fellows, something of Bandler and Grinder, who ran into or were fascinated by Milton Erickson. Most of you know him, I guess. He was a very well-known hypnotherapist. They would film him. But Milton Erickson never knew what he was doing. I mean, he knew what he was doing, but he didn't know how to tell anybody what he was doing. And so what Bandler and Grinder did was they sat down and they modeled it. They watched him. They took films of him, and they would, what are these words he's using? And they took it apart and put it together until they finally modeled exactly what he was doing. So NLP, in a way, is kind of a modeling thing.
That's exactly what it is.
And so, and out of that, a number of very useful techniques, personal improvement techniques, showed up. And Don, being an expert in that, has an intense interest in ADD, attention deficit disorder. And so basically you used NLP techniques to model what they do, correct?
Mm-hmm. What goes on the inside that drives the outside behaviors.
Yeah, so you modeled all that.
Right.
And once you model it, it's sort of like in the terminology we've been using here, finding the core issue, so to speak, finding what's really going on, then you can tap on it and you're going to get much better results. So by modeling it, then you came across EFT and you found by modeling, including the belief systems, okay, and then by addressing it with EFT, you got better results. So I have that right?
That's exactly right.
Okay. I'm going to leave here in a minute, but one of the things I'm going to tell you about that's going to happen is after about 50 minutes into this, approximately, Don is going to have a few of you people come up. How many? 4?
I need 4 volunteers.
4 volunteers. So you will get, to show you a way so that you yourself, see if I'm saying this right, Don, so that you yourself will understand what it's like to be ADD.
Right.
Okay?
We're going to pass on the experience to you.
Okay, and then what he's going to do, this so you know, this is going to be important because we're going to need your cooperation for the logistics here. It's very important. We're going to have a 40-minute break. 30 minutes will be with you either in groups of 5 around the room. Some of you need to go outside to be able to get enough room to do that.
That's where I'd go.
Okay. So you need to leave the room, but you need to do this exercise that he's going to teach you so everybody has that idea. And then after that, there's going to be another 10 minutes of just regular break, if you will. And then we will reconvene at that. So I'm going to tell you about it. And while Don is doing this exercise up here to show you, I'll be up here as well with a microphone trying to, get people to, we only have so many microphones, so I'll be up here trying to be the microphone man at the time. So with that in mind, it's yours, Don. I'm going to take this chair out of here.
Okay.
And,
no, leave it there.
Leave it there. All right.
Yes,
I can do it.
So I can have something to put my stuff on. We will, since I don't have something up here to write on, as a normal school teacher does, if you will go to the part of my handout that says attention deficit disorder, it's about eight pages into the blue. And
wait a second.
because I normally have like a flip chart up here that I can refer to, but I don't know how that would show up. So,
Do you want the whiteboard?
No, because I'd have to write on it, and I don't even want to do that.
Okay.
So this will work. Well, hello. I got a better idea. In Oklahoma, we have a word called howdy. So, howdy. Howdy. All right. I am so pumped up to be here. You wouldn't believe it. I felt like I've had one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake, and all this stuff we've been doing. I'm just, let me at him. So if I'm talking too fast or I feel like I'm erratic, just wait until the adrenaline wears off and I'll be okay. But I am so ready to get this on that you can't believe it. I'm an educator by profession and by experience, and I always wondered when I got into NLP why they didn't apply it to the learning problems that were going on in school, because when I was a teacher, I saw that all the time. I saw very, very bright students that would struggle in the classroom, and always wondered why. And when I got into NLP, I said, this is going to explain to me why this happens. So about 20 years ago, I formed my business Success Skills in Oklahoma City, and started modeling students that struggle in school. And I wasn't doing anything in ADD at that time. I just wanted to know why the typical student was underachieving. And I'll pass on later on some of the things that I found about that. So for 20 years I've been doing this. About 6 or 7 years ago, I decided that I wanted to upgrade my NLP skills, and I took a course of training, 21-day course of training, where we applied NLP to health issues. And it's a marvelous, marvelous training program. You have to be certified master level in NLP before you can even get in it. And in that training program, I decided we did projects on some health issue that they would have in the world. And so my project, I decided, was going to be attention deficit disorder. And so that's what started all of this stuff. And then about 4 years ago, I wrote a book called Rediscover the Joy of Learning, in which I had in there the techniques on ADD, or some of the stuff that I had found on ADD. And it just kind of catapulted me out into the world, so to speak. So let me, that's me, and that's where I came from. That's how I got to this particular point. But let's get on into where we need to get into. I want you to kind of close your eyes, get yourself comfortable for a minute, and I want to give you an experience. Imagine that you're in an auditorium. It's one of those multimedia auditoriums where they have maybe 5 or 6 slide projectors at the back of the room that flash up on this huge screen. And I'm sure most of you know what this is like. Normally, like at the end of a school year or something, they might have pictures of kids doing various things in a school, and they have this voice overriding everything saying, this has been our year. And you're sitting there watching all these slides. Well, take away the voice, and the difference in this slideshow is that every projector has a different subject on it. You may have a subject about what's going on right now on one slideshow. On another one, you might have the subject might be, what am I going to do this weekend? Or what am I going to do when I get back home? Or how am I going to explain what I've been doing here in Flagstaff to my clients? Or how am I going to apply all these marketing techniques that we're getting from Gary? But the point is that you've got 6 different slideshows going at the same time. So you're sitting there and you're watching this, which is kind of confusing, I would imagine. And then something important happens. A person of authority, like a parent or a principal of a school or your boss, walks up to you and hands you a pencil and pad and says, I want a report on this, and I want that report to be as accurate as it can possibly be. So you're sitting there trying to frantically write in words, and the old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words is even more correct here. You're going to write in words on a pencil and pad, on the pad, what your experience is and what they're doing. Isn't that kind of frantic? Aren't you already getting behind? Now, the person of authority comes up to you and says, you're not doing it well enough. I want you to do it better. Speed it up. You're just being lazy. You're not doing it right. And besides that, mysteriously, the pictures that are up on the slideshow start to appear and disappear even more rapidly. Some of them are even appearing simultaneously. The person of authority comes up to you again. You've got to do better. You've got to do better. This is not going to work. Now, check out your feelings. How do you feel? Frustrated? Feel like you can't do it? Feel like you're incapable of achieving this? Feel frustrated? How many of you are getting angry? You can come out now. You might want to do a little tapping or something to clear that out of yourself if you want to. And I want you to kind of remember, what were the issues for you? Because those would be the issues that if you were working with somebody with ADD that you might possibly want to seek out and work with, because these kids have those issues because of that pressure that is on them. Now, so when I started modeling attention deficit disorder, I decided that I would take a friend of mine that was in my church choir. He's 52 years old, and he had ADHD. And I said, if you'll come over to my office and let me kind of step into your mind and play around in it, I won't charge you for this, but you'll help the kids of the world, because I hopefully will be able to figure out what ADD is and figure out some way to help it. And to his credit, he did. And so I kind of started slow, and I started building a model of attention deficit disorder. But just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, let's make sure we all know what the symptoms of ADD are. One of them is hyperactivity, which is the one that drives most teachers and sometimes parents and people crazy because the kid can't sit still. They can't, climbs, how some of them climbing up over my chair and under my tables and, running around the room frantically and stuff like this, and they just can't control themselves. And you might understand what it does in a classroom. It just literally drives the teacher crazy. And it's probably because of the hyperactivity that we have a tremendous over-diagnosis of ADD in the world, as far as I'm concerned. Because some kids are just hyper, they don't necessarily have ADD. Another possible one is impulsiveness. These are the ones that, they think something and they act it. They don't go, well, what will happen to me if I do this? It's like it's there, and my 52-year-old friend said, I can be driving down the street and a cross street will come up, and I'll just turn, immediately. He'll say, I just have the thought I need to go down that street, and said I may not even brake properly. And if there's anybody else in the car, guess what they're doing? They're flying all over the car. And so they basically act before they think. Distractibility, they can't stay focused. They can't stay on one subject. If they may be focused for a minute, but then they're gone. They're off on something else. And it's very difficult to do well in school, if you can't focus. Besides the high altitude here, I must be talking too fast because I'm running out of breath up here, so I'm going to slow down here. Lack of organization, and this particularly shows up in school. If you have like a science project or something like this, they don't know how to, they don't know how to organize it. They don't know, thank you. They don't know how to organize it. They don't know how to prioritize the steps that you would go through. They sometimes don't even know what the steps are. Forgetfulness, this one comes a lot from parents. The parent will say, I'll tell him to go to his room and clean up the bed and make the bed and clean up the clothes on the floor and do his homework, and said, I'll go in there 30 minutes later, and he's just sitting on the bed and he hasn't done anything, and he can't remember what I told him to do. Okay? And then another one is procrastination. Procrastination is that they comes across like they have a test, for example, and they will put off studying for the test, or they'll put off getting their homework in or something like this, and it drives parents crazy because, this, if you just think ahead, you could do this, but they don't. And so they're labeled with procrastination. By the way, one of the ways that I can slow down is that I will take questions. So I love questions, and so if you have a question, I don't need any case histories that you've worked with, but if you have a question about something that I'm saying, if I'm not pronouncing things right or something like this, feel free to go to one of the microphones and let me know. Now, based upon the experience that you had with the slideshow, let's think about what the subjective experience is that goes on the inside. You have multiple images that are flying around. Some of them will appear and then disappear. Some of them will be like a shooting star show with the ones that I've talked to. They literally call it's like a fireworks display. Some of them will say, well, I have a thought and then it's gone. How many of you ever done that, by the way? Yeah, that's kind of a universal experience. By the way, when you go back to the symptoms of ADD, have any of you ever experienced those symptoms of ADD? Yeah, we all have. And so what they do when they diagnose ADD, they say if you have those symptoms over time and across context, that it's possible that you might have ADD. See, there's not a way to really diagnose ADD. You just have these behavioral symptoms. And so then the most common thing that they do is give you Ritalin or some other drug. And I've actually had medical doctors say, well, we'll give you Ritalin, and if everything smooths out, then we know you have ADD. And they won't even diagnose them before they do that, which I don't think is really too smooth. But you have all these images in there. I once had a 12-year-old boy that was doing this, and he was a very unusual 12-year-old. He was very into what was going on the inside of his head and what was happening internally. And so he was probably the third one that I actually modeled with as far as ADD. And one time he was kind of into the experience of being ADD, and I said, well, how many pictures do you have in there right now? And he went inside for a minute, and he came out, and he said, I've got 16. I said, what are they like? And he says, well, it's actually 4 rows of 4 TV or monitors. And every monitor has a different subject on it. Sometimes there's writing on the monitor, and then sometimes it's an actual experience of something that's happened. And I said, well, how do you keep up with it? And he said, well, I don't. That's the problem, because they can't focus on just one. And I've had others give me different kinds of experiences, but it's all about multiple images. And many times it's about the images that are moving and they can't control them. And that's the big thing, they can't control them. You and I may have multiple images. When we're being creative and brainstorming and things like this, we may be able to get that stuff flowing. But we can stop and go, okay, I want to think about this for a minute and focus on one of them. They don't seem to be able to do that. Another thing that was real important is that there's a strong kinesthetic response to these images. There is what I call a VK connection that's a real tight connection. They see and they do. They see and they move. So when they have an image in their mind of themselves doing something, they have a kinesthetic body response, kind of like what I was having about getting up here. Let's get my motor, pumping my motor up. Excuse me, I didn't see you over there.
That's okay. I've heard different answers to this question, so I'm interested in your opinion. Do you find kids with ADD and ADHD who can sit down and play video games for an hour and without moving, but when they have to do something they don't want to do, then they can't do it?
Absolutely. And the reason for that is this VK loop. If they have a K, an emotional attachment to what they're doing that's strong, then they can stay focused on that one particular subject. And that's one of the things that drives a lot of parents and teachers crazy, is that you do have these kids that can sit there and watch a movie or watch a TV or play a video game, and they can do it for hours, but then you ask them to sit there and do their 10-minute homework assignment, and they can't do it. And it's because it's not that important to them. The K part of it's not that important, actually. They can't control any of these experiences, which I found is one of the most critical elements of a person with the ADD symptoms of everything, was their feeling that they were out of control, which generates all sorts of the emotions that you guys deal with all the time with tapping. By the way, I am so honored to be here in your presence. You just wouldn't believe it. I'm going to have to do some tapping on this. I'll be all right. I have a dream. If you go to my website, you can see this. I have a dream where concerned individuals of the world will rescue the children of the world from all the trauma that's going on, all the traumatizing that's going on in schools, so that they can grow up to be the kind of person that they were meant to be. Hey, let's have an amen on that. It is their God-given right, to not to have the trauma. It's their God-given right to be able to learn. It's a God-given right to live up to their potential, to be the person that they were born to be. When we unleash you guys out there, there's going to be a tidal wave that goes across the world. I really believe this, because you guys have the skills. And I'll prove it to you by the time I get off the stage. You have the unique skills to be able to turn these kids around. You can transform their lives. I believe that. I'm hoping I'm going to be able to show it to you by the time we get through here. If my voice will hold up. Now, when they have these moving pictures, and they're trying to physically respond to those pictures and do something, and a lot of times that's because we put pressure on them, that they're supposed to be. And so it's like a pressure cooker. But as those pictures are sitting there spinning around, the pressure boils and boils and boils and boils. Builds and builds, boils and boils, that's okay. Builds up, and they're just overly charged. They're sitting there just super pent up energy. And that's why that they do some of the things that they do. The hyperactivity, when you're doing that, and you're just like me, I'm so pumped up that the only way I can relieve the pressure in my body is to move my body. Now, I guess if I knew tapping, I could probably do something with it, but they don't know that. You can teach them that. So they move their body and it gets them in trouble. When they get in trouble, guess what? The pictures start moving faster because the stress and anxiety are making them move faster, and guess what? The pressure builds even more. And so it becomes something that's totally out of control, scares them to death. Sometimes they feel totally overwhelmed by that process. They'll go to great lengths to control their internal experience and sometimes their external behavior. you'll see them doing this. And this is where sometimes they get misdiagnosed. Sometimes I will have people say, well, they talk to themselves all the time. You know, they can't be visual. But this is what they're doing. They're trying to slow down their internal world. So you'll see them do it like this. Okay, first I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. Well, when you do that, is that not a kinesthetic kind of I'm going to slow everything down? And so they think that they're talking to themselves, and therefore they're auditory. My experience, they're not. My experience is that's just a way for them to try to slow down the internal experience. They also will try to control their environment. So they may, in their home, for example, they may have stuff on their cabinet or on their desk in a certain place so they may come across as very neat. Some of them do, not all of them come across that way. In schools, we have quiet rooms, or we have special rooms where we'll send them, or sometimes the teacher will put them in special places in the room so that they won't be so distracted, by what's going on around them, and they can be more in control or feel like they are. They suffer from fear of rejection because they come across as different. They have trouble with social skills because the way their mind is moving, they have trouble communicating. And a lot of times whenever they communicate certain ways, their peers, their friends will go, that's weird, man. What are you talking about? How can you think like that? They get the kind of feedback from the teachers and their parents and their peers that they are different and that they are weird. And then there's a tremendous amount of pressure for them to fit into the system. And they don't know how. They don't have control. They can't do that. And so then that puts up all sorts of anxiety and all sorts of stress on them to be able to, to not even know what to do. This is going to sound a little weird, but their level of hyperactivity and their intensity of their emotional response seems to come from the standards that are imposed on them or that they have adopted as to how they should act. So, if you have a parent that's real stern, real strict, and says, don't you ever do that again or something like this, they react to that, and that causes the pressure cooker to be activated even more. This 52-year-old man, for example, was the son of a prominent Methodist minister in Oklahoma City. And I mean prominent is like it was the Methodist church in the richest part of town. And he was telling me the story about one time when he was pretty young that he did something he wasn't supposed to do. And his father literally almost threw him into a chair and got right in his face with a finger and said, "Don't you ever do that again." And I'm sure he said some more besides that. To this day, my friend, the 52-year-old, could be sitting right there, and I would do this to him, and he'd go into a phobic response. It was such a strong message that he received. A lot of times, though, it is what they have internalized. Maybe it comes from the parents, or maybe it comes from teachers or peers, but it's not necessarily that they accept the message from outside or that they even believe the message from outside, but it's the meaning that they attach themselves. And then they have a lot of intensity that's attached to that meaning. One of the reasons I found EFT was I found all this rage. I mean, tremendous rage, and they deservedly so. I mean, this is the most misaligned, not the most, this is a terribly misaligned, this is a terrible, maligned part of our society. I mean, they are put down, criticized, judged by teachers, and the teachers, are not necessarily intending to do this. Parents aren't. I'm not saying I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying it's the way our system is set up. It's primarily caused by that they don't fit in our system, particularly in our school system, and we don't know how to help them. Like I said, the best way that the primary way that we've come up with to help them is to drug them. And all that does is turn them into zombies, most of them, and they just kind of sit there and zone out. Now, there are some students that Ritalin and other medicines work with. But I'd say, in my experience, they are a small percentage as opposed to the bigger percentage of it. So what I did when I started studying this was I wanted to find something for the rage and the anger that I found, regardless where it came from. And EFT was what I found that worked the best. Before I found EFT, I'd designed some NLP strategies for working with the anger, and I actually called one of them the anger dance for a while. And then I found that the anger dance worked on hyperactivity and impulsiveness and some of the symptoms, so I changed the name of it to the ADD dance. And literally what it is a way to install a strategy on them so that they can't get caught up in the anger. They can, when they start to get angry, it literally programs them to go another way. But I found EFT, and EFT is faster than that even. So we'll keep the ADD dance in the book, but we'll use EFT. Now, why do they act that way? Let's kind of think about the hyperactivity. You got all these pictures flying around. You got all this pressure building on the inside. Like I said, the only way that you can do something is to move your body to relieve the pressure. They don't know anything else to do. The impulsiveness, what happens there? Well, you've got this pressure cooker that's building. I don't know if you've ever, I'm an old farm boy, so I know what a home pressure cooker looks like. You have this pot, and it has this top on it that you screw down. It has a little pressure gauge up here at the top, and you can adjust it to let pressure off in a certain way. And so what we used to do, and on the farm that we had, would have black-eyed peas or corn, and would put them in these jars, mason jars, and put the lid on, put a little water in the pot, screw the lid down, turn the fire on. The pressure and the heat builds up on the inside. So these students have this pressure building. Now what happens whenever on the pressure pot, whenever the pressure gets to a prescribed height, this little toggle switch is what I'll call it, but it releases steam because it can't take any more. Well, they're like that. They're sitting there with pressure built up, and then all of a sudden something happens, or they see something, or they hear something, and it's like it was the final straw, if you will, that releases that pressure, and they move. So they might be sitting in the classroom and the pressure's building, and they hear a sound outside, and it's like, bam, they're out the window before they even think about it, because that's why they're programmed to work. That when they've got to move their bodies in order to relieve that, they can't take any more pressure, is basically what it boils down to. So that's one of the reasons I think that they're impulsive. Distractibility, man, this is a good home test. When we did this little thing a while ago, this multiple projector thing, how focused were you? I mean, would you be able to, if given the assignment that you were supposed to be able to write a report of all 6 slide projectors and things like this, which one would you focus on if you didn't have a way to make a decision about that? You try to go from one to the other, and maybe you say, okay, well, no, this one, no, this one, no, this one. And they're like that. There's so much activity that's going on inside of their minds and their experience, and they don't have any criteria, they don't have any strategies for how to pick something and to stay with it, except for the games and except for the movies and things like this, of which they have a high priority or have high criteria attached to it. So if they're doing something that is really, really important to them, important than anything else that's going on, they have what they call hyper-focus. This 52-year-old friend of mine was I'm trying to think of the name. He's emergency technician, EMT, I think they call it, emergency medical technician. And he told me stories like this. He was in Vietnam, and he said, when I would see somebody go down, and there would be bullets flying everywhere and shells, coming down, and he said, but when I saw a soldier go down, everything else left my consciousness. I went directly to that soldier. I did not think about the bullets. I did not think about getting killed. I was going to the side of my comrade, and I wouldn't even, I'd jump over boulders and everything else, anything that was in my way, because it was so important to him to help his fellow man. He had a job as the EMT at a local hockey arena. So when they'd have hockey matches, for example, He would be the one, if somebody got hurt, he would go to them and give them emergency medical help. And he would told me the story that he was on one side of the arena. You know, they have those high glass fences, or what do you call them, around it. The puck went up into the crowd on the opposite side of the arena and hit somebody in the forehead. He said somehow, and I don't even know how I did this, I climbed over the glass barrier, went across the icy floor, climbed over the glass barrier on the other side, and got to that guy's side. And I don't even remember how I got there. He said all I could think about and all I was doing is just keeping my eye on the person that had fallen. That's pretty good focus, you know. If we could bring that to school, you know, that we could help them out a lot. Lack of organization. You know, how would you organize all those images flying around in your mind? Now, what you would do as a normal human being is that you would say, okay, well, let's see. Here's this one, and here's this one, and here's this one, and here's this one. Here's the 6 steps that I have to do my science project. And no, I think I'll rearrange this because this is more important than this one. They can't do that because they can't control the images. So there's no way for them to prioritize. There's no way for them to sit there and even hold in their mind all the different steps that they have to go through in order to have something organized because of the multiple images. Forgetfulness. This one is actually the easiest one to clean up that I have found. This one usually comes from the concept that there's a strong kinesthetic visual connection. Now, so they're primarily focused on what they see, and they're primarily focused on what they're doing. Did you hear any auditory in there? No. And one of the things that I found that just kind of blew me away is they don't do auditory. Auditory means talking. Means listening and talking to themselves and things like that. It's too slow. They only do it when they're trying to slow themselves down. So when a parent says, I want you to go to your room and make up your bed, and I want you to pick up the clothes off the floor, and I want you to clean up your closet, and I want you to do your homework, it's just like go right over their head because it's not in their system. If you want to communicate with somebody that has ADD, then you either give them visual instruction or you give them kinesthetic instruction. You actually get them to picture themselves doing it, maybe even feeling their body do it, or you have them do something with their body. And then now you're in their system. But many, many parents and many teachers don't do that. And also, by the way, our schools are heavily auditory too. So when the teacher is up talking in front of the class, you think they're paying any attention to it? No, because they're into these fast-moving pictures and they're not processing what's going on because it's moving too slow. I actually had one young man, 18-year-old from Minnesota. His mother brought down to see me, and I was about to do some work on him and do the ADD dance to take away, the fast-moving pictures and stuff like this. And he said, wait a minute. I said, what's the matter? He says, how am I going to entertain myself if everything starts moving slower? I get a lot of fun out of this. And they really do. It's an exciting world. It really is. But they sometimes they don't want to give that up. And so what I did was give them a choice. I said, well, we'll let this one hide around in the back, and you can pick it up and play with it when you want to. But when you're in school or when your parents are talking to you, here's the strategy that I want you to use. So we just gave them a choice.
Yeah, could you give some specific examples of how you'd give those instructions? Like some what-if sorts of things? You said instead of giving auditory instructions about do this and this and this, how you'd walk through a kid in a classroom or a kid at home? Or
Sure, let's take the example at home. Excuse me. I might say, if his name is Johnny, let's say, I might say, Johnny, your bed. I want you to picture your bed. Feel yourself making that bed up, and see and feel yourself making the bed up. Then the clothes that are on your floor in there, do you know what that looks like? Remember the last time you were in there? I want you to see and feel yourself picking those up and putting them away. So you just instruct them to do that. You can either do that or you can actually, take them into the room itself and actually, point out to them visually what it is that you want them to do and even get them started doing it. That takes a little bit longer to do that.
Don, a little while ago, you mentioned an 18-year-old. It's commonly believed, I think, that people grow out of ADD. It's been my experience that that's not necessarily the truth. What has been your experience with this, and do you work with adults?
You're right. That's not true. It is a common myth that they grow out of it, and now it's becoming uncommon because we now know that that's not so. There's more and more adults that are showing up that have ADD. In fact, my wife is in the business world, and we're finding a lot of the people out in the business world that are closet ADD cases that are not being promoted, not being accepted because they can't cut it. So.
Just as follow-up, would you say that they just become better at masking it as they get older, or finding ways to cope?
If they survive, they do. But a lot of times, I'll have people call me and say, like I had a mother call me from Arkansas the other day that has a 22-year-old. And when he was in school, when he was in high school, he was even suicidal. He was so bad. And she said he's now out, and he's got a job. He's got 2 kids. But the job pressure is getting to him because he's not cutting it like they want him to cut it. And so he called her and said, I need help. I've got to do something with this. And so, you'll be in a job and maybe you know how to do a certain job and you get promoted. And all of a sudden you got to learn, like in computer or high-tech stuff, you got to learn all this new stuff. And the learning strategies that they learned back in school, which went kind of slow, and maybe they survive school, but they don't survive the fast-moving business world anymore. And so one of the things that Linda and I are talking about doing is how can we get this into the business world? As your employees need to learn how to learn, and they need to learn need to deal with all that trauma that they had in the classroom. One more question, then I need 4 volunteers up here to demonstrate. I'm not going to work on anybody now, so don't get. I just need 4 volunteers up here to. I'm going to show you how to do an exercise that I'm going to put you into. So.
Like with depression, they give them drugs, so they treat it chemically. With ADD, the drug of choice, obviously, with Ritalin and so on, is to treat this condition chemically. Is there any chemical basis at all concerning ADD, or is it basically all like you say? It's just the pictures in the head and the wording and whatever's going on up there?
Well, if you have an internal experience like I'm describing, you have a chemical reaction. I guarantee you. You have a physiological reaction, you have a chemical reaction in the body.
Is there okay, it's like which came first, the chicken or the egg?
I don't know.
Is it the chemical reaction causes ADD, or does ADD cause a chemical reaction?
The answer is yes, I heard that. Okay, 4 volunteers. Did you have one more? I want to volunteer. Okay, come on. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do this, I want all of you to do this, and you two, go back. I need to set something up. I want you to get a piece of paper. We're about to do an exercise that is going to give you the experience, experientially, kinesthetically, what it's like to be ADD. Because I know you guys, if you've experienced it before, you're going to be much better at treating them and using those wonderful intuitions and stuff like that. So I want a list. I want a list of 10 things or actions. Could be something like ball, clown, run, think, study, tree, just 10 things, either 10 things or 10 actions. One word. Hurry, quickly. And it doesn't have to be right, by the way. Okay, need 4 volunteers, and the rest of you can keep writing if you want to. Okay, you, young man. Okay? Yeah, you need to bring your list up, even if it's not 10 things. We're just going to do a partial demonstration of what you're about to do. I've been searching for a way to transfer experience. I think learning is not about talking to people, but it's about giving you experience. So here's the way this exercise is going to... Oh, thank you. Thank you for this one. I'll do that while y'all are doing the exercise. Okay, the exercise goes like this. I'm going to pretend as though I'm the ADD person. I want 3 people behind me with their list. So, wait a minute, let me ask this question. Who's the best parent here? Who's a parent that can be, be you? Are you a parent? A parent, yeah. Okay, we'll let you get in front of me. The rest of you get behind me. You're one of those. Over there. I'm going to turn this way. Now, the exercise goes like this. I'm the person with attention deficit disorder. I want them to sit there and read off their list, but I want them to give me a kinesthetic feeling about this too. So they will do things like this. They'll read the list. They'll say, ball, chain, run, think, and they'll, in some nice social way, they will sit there and touch me every time they say a word. I do not want them to be polite and wait for each other. I want them to say them simultaneously, okay? So that I'm getting an auditory input, which is what these kids did, and I'm getting a kinesthetic response to that auditory input, okay? My task is to remember as many of those things that they said as possible, okay? Now, this is a parent or maybe a school teacher, whichever you want to be, probably a parent. We're going to do this for 2 minutes, okay? For the first minute, I want him to be a stern parent. So he's in my face. God, you're not doing it right. You can do better. You're just being lazy. Whatever he comes up with. Finger in the face, like this. I'll be the timer. No, I'll be the timer. You be the timer. After about a... You can't do everything. I don't even want to do this, to tell you the truth. In a minute, I'm going to give him an idea. I'm going to say switch. And so he's going to have to do this miraculous switch. And then I want him to be a real nurturing parent. And so, come on, Andy, you can do this. I believe in you. I love you. You can come on, do it for me, would you? And then after I've got both experiences, we're going to give you 2 minutes to debrief. So we'll do that for 2 minutes. Then you get 2 minutes for everybody to debrief, primarily him, but primarily me. What was it like for me to have all this pressure on me? What issues came up? What emotions came up? Because this is what's going to come up with the people that you work with that have been diagnosed with ADD. If he wants to, he can talk about, which was easier for him to get into. If they want, they're just going to be sitting back there, yelling at me, so to speak, and touching me. Okay? So let's give you a brief demonstration of this, and then we'll go on and do it. Y'all know what to do?
Yes.
Okay.
The first set of good parent goes for 1 minute, and then the second pack
I'm going to cut you off.
Okay. Hold it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So get up in my face.
Ready?
Jump.
Don, now listen, I told you when I get home from work today, I wanted to have the kitchen done.
Cry.
Okay. Switch. No, I want y'all to go for 2 minutes, but that's enough for the demonstration. You guys did it perfectly, and you did good. Man, I tell you what.
Don, listen, I really need to have the kitchen clean when I get home tonight, so I want you to take care of the kitchen, I want you to take care of your bedroom, you need to have the bathroom cleaned after that.
Okay.
Jump.
Now, I've tuned them out because he's more important to me. That's not what most people do. Your task, see, if Gary has one of his $100 bills, we could say, of the 5 people up here, which one remembers the most of what they said? So I want you to set that as a goal. It's a contest of the 5 of you. Who remembers what they're saying the most? Okay, we don't have a $100 bill, but that's because I want you to focus on them. See if you can do that with him in your face, on either one of them. Yeah, you might want to tap on this. Okay? Because this is what it's like for these kids. All right? Thank you, guys.
I'd like to share something.
Okay?
You do it this way.
Yeah. I remember going into my 13-year-old's room, and she had the TV on and the radio on another station. She was doing her homework. And I said, how do you do this? She said, it keeps the part of my mind that would be daydreaming, otherwise busy.
That's right. Now, so here's, logistically, we got a lot of people. I would suggest that many of you leave this room because this gets loud. If any of the meeting rooms or the hallways are out there, over in this area, if you want to, you can go out there. If I were you, I'd go outside in the sunshine. It's a beautiful day out there. There's areas back over here, there's clear areas over there. And when the music starts playing in here, we're giving you 40 minutes. The 40 minutes includes a 10-minute break. You're going to have 5 minutes to organize yourself. Every person that does the role will have 2 minutes, 2 minutes of debriefing, and then a minute to reorganize. Okay? So every person gets 5 minutes, so you actually have 25 minutes for the exercise itself, okay? 5 minutes to get yourself 4 other people, and then a 10-minute break, which you can take any time during this time that you want to. But I would recommend out there, for those of you that want some air. Any questions about the exercise itself?
Same 5 people?
Same 5 people throughout the whole thing. Go for it.
Mommy, please clean your room. I know you can do this. There's nothing really wrong with you. Please, remember to clean up your room and put those toys away before I come in the door. If we have to, we'll get an alarm clock. We'll set the clock. When it's that time, we'll just go there and do those things. Do you think you could do that for me, Kathy? I would really appreciate it, because I can't come home anymore and find these things all over the place.
You have this potential.
Swims.
I know you can do this. I know you can. I know you have all the abilities. And we go step by step.
Pony, hug, run, school, home, walk, hug, kiss, swim, bed, school, pony, kiss, dance, walk.
To you. Yeah?
Now, the funny thing is, really, I remember more when she was screaming at me than I did being nice, because when she was nice, I listened. When she was screaming, I turned her off totally and listened to y'all.
Well, I'm real interested in hearing feedback about what your experiences were. I don't know that we can hear from all of you, but if anybody had something of significance that they'd like to report. Did it work? Okay. Yes.
It was awful. I'm still totally disoriented. When they were bombarding me and it was really negative, I wanted to scream. I started shaking my head. I couldn't make eye contact anymore, and I wanted to scream. I was literally getting very upset and physically, and I almost couldn't stand it, and I sort of, said, stop, stop.
So
felt
for somebody like you
Yeah.
that has this experience like ADD, would EFT be of use to you?
Oh, my God. Yeah, I tapped at
Yeah,
the end
well,
of that
yeah,
sequence.
you
I
did.
couldn't stand it.
You did, but those kids out
Those
there
kids would
don't know how
benefit.
yet, do they?
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. And then even when the kind words were coming, that's when I started hearing the stuff around me, and it's distracted me terribly, and I got pictures in my mind, and I was really that was really disorienting. And then after that, it was my turn to still can't talk. To say the words and touch the other person, and I couldn't do it. I was so disoriented, and I'm still feeling it. So I think I really got it.
I think you got it. Sounds to me like you got it.
I found when I had the nagging that I tuned everybody and everything out. It was like nothing was there. And I flashed back to first grade when we had reading groups. And that's one of the things that it stressed for us, that we pay attention, really focus. So when I read and I get absorbed in something, my husband can come up and talk right in my ear and I don't hear him.
And that's one of the complaints that parents and teachers have about the kids that have been diagnosed with ADD is that they don't listen. They don't pay attention. They're off in another world or something like that.
It was real interesting because as the parent, once this criticizing ball of energy started moving, I was like, I couldn't stop it, and I kept thinking, I don't want to say this to this person, but I kept going more and more and more and more into it. It's like I couldn't get out of it once I got into it.
Right.
And it was real hard to stop it. And as the child, the most amazing thing was that I could dissociate from either the criticizing or the loving words. I didn't hear any of it.
But did you pick up on what was going on there?
Oh, yeah, back here I could hear all this going on, definitely. We were wondering if some of the tapping we had done previous had eliminated some of the triggers that would have come up
Could have.
otherwise.
Could have. By the way, there's on my website, there's a article section. And in that article section, there's probably 5 or 6 articles that I've written since I wrote my book. And one of the articles is on kids shooting kids. And in that article, I did some major NLP modeling on what's happening to the kids that are dropping through the cracks and shooting other kids and stuff like that. And the acceleration, or the, what do I want to call it, the making it worse and worse and worse between parent and child is one of the things that happens because we as parents and we as teachers and professionals don't know how to give good feedback because we've never been taught to give good feedback. So when a child starts doing poorly in school, and maybe they're traumatized by it, maybe we start getting on them because they're not doing bad, or they're doing badly in school, and then the child takes it wrong, they take it, quote unquote, personally, and then it escalates into a battle on who's right, and then we forget what the original battle was about. And there's a whole dynamic that goes on there, and it's that emotional rage and anger and all sorts of stuff that goes on that drives this, so that if those things happen, if we can learn to give feedback and if we can learn to relieve them of that emotional baggage, it gives us a shot at really, pulling them up by their bootstraps, so to speak, and I'm going to be talking some more about that back there.
Yeah, we've had the opportunity to raise a daughter that's been ADHD. She's now 21. So it's really interesting to go through this process because I've always tried to figure out what's going on in her head. I even had one of the doctors say, well, take the Ritalin and see what it does for you. Well, I wasn't ADD, so I got wired. I said that was kind of not a very good.
It is speed, by the way, Ritalin is speed.
So I was running around differently than she did for the Ritalin. So we only had a Ritalin for a little while. But doing this, we had several different similar reactions. Mine was that as I tried to focus on what was going on behind me, I would forget what they were telling me in front. So then I said, well, it's more important to go in front. So to listen, I get the focus, but then I'd be distracted and go back and forth. So at the end, the only two things I came out with is one, when they were in my face, I felt that feeling. When she was loving and kind, I felt that feeling. Those are the things I was left with. But I was also left with, I was supposed to do something. I remember the bedroom, so I figured what I have to do is go to the bedroom and do something. And I've seen this when I've trained horses, that if you don't give them correct cue, they don't know what that cue is all about, or they don't have the ability to do it when they do understand, they'll do something because they want to please.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I remember my daughter doing. She would do something to please us, but it wasn't always what we wanted.
Yeah. And how many of you came up with some sort of coping strategy for how you, and that's what they do too. And it's a coping strategy according to their model of the world, not according to your model of the world. Because they're terrified a lot of times about what's going on and stuff like that. And so one of the things that I train my people, my joy people to do, is you've got to be able to join their world, understand where they're coming from, how do they do what they do, and then you guys have skills for being able to deal with that. If they're overwhelmed, if they're confused, if they're bewildered, if they're terrified, all that stuff can be tapped away with EFT. Okay, let's see. You were standing up a long time ago.
Mine was when I was being affronted. I was getting squinched up and scared. I was shrinking. And so I'd tune out. I'd phase back and I'd listen to them, and then I'd think, I should remember this. So I'd try to listen to someone and try to remember. And then it would go, and I'd listen to her again, and then I would hear that, and then I would go. And then I just got into, oh, that tapping's nice. Look, I'm just swaying back and forth and going with it. And I could hear them, and I could hear her, but it was okay. I was fine. Yeah. And the softness and the loving was it was different, but I couldn't feel that. Mm-hmm. By then I was already in my own space, And I think I work as a substitute teacher from kindergarten to 6th grade, so I can teach some of these tools. And I see that a lot with the kids. If you do confront them, they're gone. They're just gone. Mm-hmm. And so learning, I have taught a few of them to sit down with me and do the EFT, and they will tap. I get their permission, obviously, mm-hmm. and they tap, and then they're okay. And they'll say, and what else was going on? And then I'll say, okay, is there anything else? Oh, I'm fine. And they'd cut off, and they would be much better in class. So but I think a lot of us are still carrying on whatever was going on. It certainly pushed a few buttons on me. Okay.
It's supposed to. If I were you, you'd either remember or write down what some of the issues that came up for you. Like if you were overwhelmed or bewildered or something like this, or terrified, or felt out of control, whatever. Those are the issues that you can tap on. And if we have time after a while, I'll show you my unique way of tapping. I may even show you another way to tap. But you guys already know how to tap. So, what I'm trying to do is help you identify the aspects. So, for example, right now, if you're feeling disoriented, then, even though I'm feeling disoriented, you do the psychological reversal and then do the tapping on that. Same stuff that we've done this home weekend. I mean, all that exercise does is just bring all that stuff up. Now you know what to do with it. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on a couple of coping strategies that apparently keyed in so fast I didn't know they were there. But they worked very well, and I was wondering if there's anything in there that's a germ of an idea, perhaps for kids. I don't know. The first one was when the person was yelling at me, the confronting parent. The people who were in the background touching me and talking to me, they immediately became like a chorus, a choral effect that you hear in modern dance where the different themes come in. So that was very pleasant. And then the parent was yelling at me, but while I heard this chorus, which was soothing me, I could tune in to a few words the parent said and then tune out as I wanted to, then tune back. And it didn't bother me. Okay, then when the parent became very understanding, which was the second one, I realized that I should be trying to remember what these people were saying. I wasn't trying at that. Everybody reminded me. So this time I still have felt okay with it, but I guess it was because I constructed a scene. It was like a movie where the sand and the arrow and the ocean and the rock and all the things they were saying went together like a mnemonic. I created it all into one scene. So that way I could remember it. And then I could also hear some of the things that the kindly parent was saying. So it worked.
I have a question for you. When you were, let's say, if you tried those strategies in junior high, let's say, or high school or something like this, how would the teachers evaluate you at the parent-teacher conference?
I think on the first one, the first time when I was just listening to the chorus, they would have thought I didn't catch anything. The second time through, I would have been able to tell them a lot of the words, but I used to do that as a kid.
Would they have called you inattentive? Or daydreamer?
I don't think so. If I could have recited back the whole list to them, pretty much.
Well, yeah, but you were only listening part-time.
No, I got almost all the words because I put them in a mnemonic. But I used to do that as a kid in school. We learned that mnemonic, my brother and I, and we'd fool everybody because we could remember everything. So maybe that's what I was doing. I don't know. Yeah. But
so all of you, with whatever strategies you came up with, one really interesting question you can ask yourself is what would have been the evaluation of me by the teacher to my parents? I mean, what would they have called me? What labels would they have put on me? Would they have wanted me to go to the doctor and get Ritalin? And just that's a way for you to kind of understand why we do what we do with the kids out there in the world that have the ADD experience.
I wanted to share one other thing that a teacher who happens to work with me, she's a supervisee of me, and she's a psychotherapist, but she's a special ed teacher. She's been using EFT with ADD kids. And one of the things she's been doing that she reports is very successful is she will sit down with a kid or take them out of the room, who's really going to pieces on something, and then she gets their permission and says, because they couldn't possibly tap for themselves. I mean, I'm thinking of one instance, the child was off the wall. I mean, he couldn't have tapped, although she had taught him it. But she said, is it okay if I tap for you? And she just tapped with this upsetting feeling, this upsetting feeling. It got quieter, quieter, and quieter. It was amazing. She's done that with a number of kids. It's surrogate in a way, but the child knows she's doing it. So she's with him, just reporting.
That's a good example of how y'all can use this too. One more question, then we want to go to what are the causes of this anyway?
This is just a comment, but I shared it with the group. For me, it didn't matter if the parent was kind or loving, kind and loving or harsh. I had to shut down and go into my own space in order to have any kind of semblance of sanity. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something I can take away and share with guidance counselors and teachers in the groups that I work with. Because if they don't ever have that experience, they may continue a behavior that is totally unproductive. The only thing that would have helped me in that experience would have been to have some other strategies. I went into my own internal space. That was my strategy.
Yeah. And that works sometimes.